Hello and welcome back to Parc, Ferme, Parlay with Kieran Downey. Part 2 of driver ratings. We have 11 drivers to go. We are heading towards the front of the grid now, and we are actually kicking things off. I didn't realise this when I was doing the last episode, that I said I was going to do 13 drivers and then 11 drivers because I didn't want to split up the Alpine drivers, forgetting that Esteban Ocon obviously didn't do the final race in Abu Dhabi and that Jack Doohan replaced him. And actually, when I spoke about Esteban Ocon, I completely left out the fact that he'd been dropped for Abu Dhabi. And I'm talking all about the two moments that everyone will remember: his great performance in Brazil and his terrible performance in Monaco. Completely forgot they didn't even do the last bloody race. So yeah, a terrible end to his forgettable year with Alpine, bar those three moments. 1, 2, 3. So now we're going to move on to Jack Doohan, the other driver that I forgot that drove for Alpine this year. And I'm going to give Jack a 5. Now, you guys, the fans, have given him a 4. And to be honest, I'm not far away from you by giving him a 5. I can't give him, I feel like I can't actually just give him a grade, because when I think about it, he didn't have a phenomenal outing or any decent outing in Abu Dhabi, but he didn't have a terrible outing. And I didn't expect anything from him, to be honest. And I didn't expect he would score points. He didn't finish last. And I kind of think, do I go like a 1? But then that's not a fair rating because it wasn't a 1 out of 10 performance. So then I thought, it's a 5, it's equal, split it down the middle, that's where we're going. As I said, I have nothing really to say. I said about it when we spoke about Abu Dhabi, and I'll say about it now. I don't have massive amounts to say about Jack Doohan's outing this year. Obviously, he spent 23 out of 24 races being a reserve sim driver and then appeared in Abu Dhabi for the final race. And I mean, we never got confirmation from the team about this. I fully believe he was just there to go out, get used to being competitive in Formula One machinery, let the team gather data on where his strong points are, where his weaknesses are, so they could sort of formulate a plan to get him ready for Australia in 25. I don't have much else to say about him. Finished the championship dead last, 24, with 0 points, but it's no slight against him because he only done one race. All right, next up is Aston Martin and Lance Stroll, who I'm giving a 3 out of 10. And you guys are actually split again across 3 different grades. A third of you going for a 1, a third of you going for a 2, and a third of you going for a 3 out of 10. Now, Lance Stroll finished 13th in the championship with 24 points. And I have to say, it was a very underwhelming season for Lance Stroll in a string of very underwhelming seasons in Formula One recently. And he's done little to dispel the fact that, well, maybe not the fact, but the notion, sorry. He's done little to dispel the notion that he's only keeping a hold of his seat by the virtue of his father being the team owner. I can't count any real strong, there's nothing that stands out as a strong performance for me. When I think of Lance Stroll's season, do you know what I think about? There's 2 things that I think about. 1, him rear-ending Daniel Ricciardo in China because he just wasn't paying attention at all. 2, him beaching himself into the gravel in Brazil, giving off an air that he almost couldn't be bothered to race. His performances were disappointing. He continued to give off the impression that he would rather be anywhere else than in the paddock, on the track, racing. I must say, I think it's hard to see what Lance Stroll's endgame is in Formula One. What does he want out of his Formula One career? Does he want to be a world champion? Does he want to win races? Because I generally can't gauge what he wants to do. And I kind of said it when we spoke about Aston Martin signing Adrian Newey, and I've said it a few other times, but Aston Martin's intentions are very clear: championships. They are hiring the right personnel, they are putting the right people in the right positions, they are spending the money where it needs to be spent, and, you know, wind tunnels and new factories and all this kind of stuff. And Lawrence Stroll, Lance's father, is very adamant that he wants championship glory. Lance Stroll's actions don't seem to align with Aston Martin's intentions, so to say. As I said, I don't know what the end game is. And there's obviously the rumours that Aston Martin are in the mix to sign Max Verstappen. And, you know, further down the line, they have Adrian Newey. And if they've got a championship contending car and Red Bull don't, then, you know, Max likes to win. So he could jump ships. And if the package is right, and it just kind of seems that things aren't going to get any easier for Lance Stroll. But every other driver is adamant that they want to be in Formula One. They want to fight for championships. They want to fight for race wins. That's what they're there to do. And whether they're in the backmarker teams of your Cybers and Williams and stuff, Carlos Sainz going to Williams and he's like, all I want to do is help bring them further up the grid. Then you've got Lewis Hamilton, he wants his 8th. You've got Max Verstappen wanting his 5th. Charles Leclerc wants his 1st. Like, all these people want world championships, race wins, and Lance Stroll just seems to kind of be there. And I have to say, I don't disagree with anyone when they give him a 1, when they give him a 2. Like, I don't, because it's been painful watching him, to be quite frank. So I'm sticking with a 3, but as I said, I don't disagree with anyone when they give him a lower score. All right, next up is his teammate, Fernando Alonso. And I've given him a 4 out of 10. The fans have given him a 5. Now, Alonso finished the championship 9th with 70 points, and I kind of feel a bit bad for Alonso because I almost feel like there was a carrot dangled in front of him in 2023 when Aston Martin appeared that they were on the verge of race wins and, you know, fighting for the championship, inserting themselves into the battle at the front of the pack. And then we came into 2024, and I think all of those rose-coloured glasses, rose-tinted lenses? I think the rose-tinted lenses really came off, and it was an extremely sobering season for Fernando Alonso. Maintained his incredibly high standards, and unsurprising to anybody, outperformed his teammate nearly every single week. He did have some, you know, errors creep in, and he did have some, you know, slightly poorer outings. One that springs to mind is Imola for me, but again, not really his fault. His car caught fire. I kind of find it hard a little bit because he was there, he was getting points, albeit sporadically. He was just kind of at the back of just outside the points positions. And he described the Japanese Grand Prix as one of the best weekends of his career, and later went on to describe the Aston Martin car for 24 as the worst car he'd ever driven. It's been quite a high and a low season for Fernando Alonso, and I think he is holding out for his next race win. Whether or not he believes a 3rd title is achievable, I don't know, but, you know, there is a question mark over how long the 43-year-old cares to remain. I don't think it's a question of will there still be a seat for him. I think Fernando Alonso, as long as he wants to drive, will probably get a seat. I think it's how much longer he actually cares to go on for. He obviously kind of suffered from a sort of late season health issue. Nothing overly bad, to be honest, but obviously the purposing in the car really caused him some damage, and he was really struggling to get out the car. I think it was around Brazil. And it is those kind of things that could, you know, play into him maybe saying this isn't worth it anymore. But he is, I can't imagine that he has any interest in leaving anytime soon, especially with Adrian Newey coming in. So we'll see what he can do next year. As I said, I'm locking in a 4 for him. I think a 5 would also be a decent grade. You guys gave him a 5, and I completely understand why. He definitely outperformed his teammate 100%. So, all right, next up is Lando Norris, who I've given an 8 out of 10. And you guys gave him a resounding 10 out of 10. Lando Norris, what a season he has had, to be quite honest. A very unexpected jump to contending for race wins. Really sort of thrust him into the spotlight that he never sort of experienced before. And, you know, this man came into this year riding a pretty big high after an amazing bounce back from McLaren in 2023, who started the year last and finished the year 4th in the Constructors. Coming into 24 with, you know, the prospect of winning races, to go on and win his first race in Miami and then win 4 further races is just incredible. He got 8 pole positions, and listen, I know there was a bit of an issue with his start. On 6 out of the 8 occasions that he started on pole, he lost the lead by the end of the first lap. There was a lot of questioning that he'd thrown away more race wins that could have been very easy race wins for him by actions on the first lap, some of which I will say were out of his control. But I will say his pole position in Abu Dhabi was an absolute stormer, and it was an incredibly dominant win to steal the Constructors' Championship for McLaren in Abu Dhabi. It was absolutely amazing. He coped very well with a lot of the pressure that was then put on him, especially after he claimed his first win in Miami. He brought a fight to Max Verstappen throughout the summer that he wasn't actually prepared for. He didn't think he was going to be in contention for winning the title this year. And it wasn't until his win in Miami that people suddenly started to think, yeah, this is on, like, let's go. And when he went to Imola and he chased Verstappen down, and had there been a few more laps, he might have gotten Verstappen, but he really chased Verstappen down in the final laps of that race, and we were all on the edge of our seats thinking, oh my God, he might be able to do it. And I must say that he's repeatedly showed that he possesses the raw speed and the talent to match Max Verstappen. However, I will say that he did make too many mistakes to apply any proper pressure to Max Verstappen for the Drivers' Championship. He couldn't really apply pressure to Verstappen the same way that McLaren applied pressure to Red Bull. Obviously, Red Bull was also a driver down, but that we'll come on to. Listen, I'm not bigging up Norris here completely because he did have low points. I do think the battle in Austria was a bit of a low point for both him and Verstappen. Repeated dive bombing into turn 3 was maybe a bit much, and I think there was frustration on both sides. I think Hungary is one of the worst moments for Lando Norris. Not in him himself, but that is more of a McLaren issue. But it did just, I think it was a little bit of a humiliation towards Lando Norris caused by the team. Again, I would also put Monza into that. I think there has been times where, again, a lot of it, the starts, he's kind of lost on the start, and he's obviously got issues to work out. I do think he'll be able to work them out for next. It does seem that whenever his issues were highlighted, he did kind of go away and sort of get them fixed and sorted and really work on them. And is a brilliant driver. He has a raw talent, and I am very excited to see what he can do next year and what McLaren can do next year. He is adamant and dead set that he is going for a championship win next year. And he couldn't put in a real proper fight to Verstappen. I think that is mostly because Verstappen opened up such a gap in the opening races that Norris couldn't really get much closer to him than what he did. Even if he took the win in Hungary and Monza, I still don't think he would have been able to close the gap much further. He did finish the championship second with 374 points. All right, next up is Oscar Piastri. And I am also giving Oscar an 8 out of 10. And you guys were split between an 8 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10. I have to say that in his second Formula One season, Oscar Piastri has shown more qualities that I think have led myself and many others to believe that he is a future world champion in the making. He did remain largely unable to sort of match Lando Norris for pace over both a sort of one lap quali and a race distance, but he did manage to upstage his teammate a few times in terms of his racecraft, you know, with some quite bold, feisty moves out there. He obviously secured his maiden victory in Hungary. I have to say that I know I spoke about it just there with Lando, that, you know, I think it's more of a slight on the team than it is the drivers, and I 100% agree, because Piastri's maiden win was completely overshadowed by the team orders that turned the race from a race into a soap opera. And it took away from what should be an incredibly special moment for Oscar. And I said it at the time that I feel bad that Oscar's maiden win, a lot of people will talk about the drama of how that win came about rather than his actual win, and I've proved myself right there. However, he did obviously go on to win again in Azerbaijan, and I'm so glad he got that win because it was a superb victory. He had a thrilling battle with Charles Leclerc, and I will always watch that overtake into turn one because that was superb driving. I'm very excited to see what he can do in his third season. The question going into season 3 for me is, can he find the extra 10th or 2 that would make him a genuine 2025 driver's title contender? Because I think he's got a lot of the qualities to be a driver's title contender, but just needs to find an extra couple of tenths. So hopefully he can. He finished the Drivers' Championship 4th with 292 points, and as I said, was obviously a 2-time Grand Prix winner. Next up is Carlos Sainz. I'm also giving him an 8 out of 10. Kind of swithered. I was originally going to give him an 8, then I was going to give him a 7, and I've put it back up to an 8. The fans, you guys were split between an 8 and a 9 out of 10. I don't think it was quite 9 out of 10 material. I think I've only given one driver a 9 out of 10, and I'll come on to him shortly. But Carlos has had quite the year. Obviously, he started the season finding out that he was getting dropped from the team and being replaced by Lewis Hamilton. And I think he delivered the best possible response to that with a fairly decent season, with some incredible high moments. One being getting appendicitis in Saudi Arabia and having his appendix removed, only to come back just 2 weeks after an appendectomy to win the Australian Grand Prix. What I will say is, from the man that, and I will remember it fondly, thinking that, oh my God, is this going to be the only man again to beat Max Verstappen? Obviously, he was the only non-Red Bull driver to win a race in 2023, and it kind of looked like it might be the same for 2024. But then, obviously, 2024 went off the rails and we had 8 different winners. It was a moment that would be difficult to top. However, he obviously got his final Ferrari victory, and I would like to say this for now because I do believe that we will see him back in the red overalls at some point. In Mexico, which I think was especially heartwarming with his family being there and so many Mexican fans adoring Carlos. Generally speaking, a fairly solid season from Sainz. He was able to match Leclerc in one lap pace and was never, the two were never fully apart from one another massively for a lot of the season in terms of the race. When we look at other drivers on the grid, they can sometimes come across maybe just a little bit bratty, maybe just a little bit quick to anger, and all of these kind of things, and have big ups and down moments. Carlos has a fantastic consistency and is very professional with everything that he kind of does, and I think that will serve him pretty well when he goes to Williams. That is what Williams need, a steady, consistent driver, because Alex Albon has had a fairly rocky season. Williams has had a fairly rocky time with the likes of Logan Sargeant, Colapinto, Albon, all having very big high-profile crashes. It'd be good for Williams to just have that consistently decent driver. And I feel bad that it is Williams that he has to go to because it's not obviously the most desirable option at the moment. And I do think he is better than Williams. I have to say it, but hopefully he can find something. And it'll be interesting to see how his mindset changes from being in a team that is winning races, scoring points, championship contender, to going to a team that at best is maybe fighting for P8. We'll see what happens. He finished the championship 5th with 290 points. He got 2 wins, and 2 fantastic wins they were in Australia. Great to have what I thought was going to be a very boring season up until Australia, when Verstappen did DNF and Sainz went on and won the race, and a fantastic win in Mexico. All right, his teammate, Charles Leclerc, I've also given an 8 out of 10. I originally gave him a 9, I dropped him to an 8, and I'm quite happy to go ahead with the 8 out of 10. You guys were split again, similar to Carlos Sainz, between an 8 and a 9. Leclerc finished third with 356 points. He won 3 races, he got 3 pole positions, and what a phenomenal year for Charles Leclerc. He overcame his Monaco curse, finally won his home race. He cut down the mistakes that he has been known to make in the past. And a lot of people sort of questioned whether or not he should hold his status as Ferrari's chosen one. And I think he kind of showed that, yeah, he is rightfully so. Obviously, Monaco was not his only win. He had a triumphant win in Monza that, again, brings tears to my eyes. I cried when I spoke about it on the podcast. He got another victory in Austin. I think what was unfortunate for Leclerc was his sort of slip up in the sort of early European races. I say European, one of them was Canada. There was a bit of a mess up with the team, and in Canada he was put on slicks when he should never have been put on slicks. It was raining. Then you move to Silverstone, where it was a fairly poor outing for him, and I think had he not had these sort of poor performances in the middle of the year, he could have cinched second in the championship, and Ferrari could have won the constructors. But it's coulda, woulda, shoulda, and I just have to say I think he's made remarkable progress this year, and he was left frustrated a few times. I think Vegas, I think Qatar, over his perception that maybe he was being treated a bit unfairly by Carlos Sainz and by Ferrari, and it may or may not be true, but he is going up against Lewis Hamilton next year as a teammate, and we all are aware of how Lewis is as a driver, and maybe a little bit more of a tactical approach is the next sort of development that Leclerc needs to take. I'm very excited for Charles Leclerc going into next year. I think he's in a good spot to put in a fight for. If Ferrari get their car right, he's in a good spot to fight for a driver's championship win. And I'm just so glad that the Monaco curse was over, because it was getting a bit depressing watching him consistently lose out, and all he wanted was to win his home race, and he did that. And as I said, still brings a tear to my eye. Monza, a phenomenal outing there, and I remember it so vividly, watching the race as the Ferrari fans, the Tifosi, finally began, as they slowly began to click on that he was going long. He was going real long on his stint to secure a race win, and my God, what a celebration. Oh God, I need to experience that once in my life. So yeah, as I said, Charles Leclerc finished third in the championship, 356 points. He put in a very good fight with Lando Norris for second. And I will say another absolutely incredible highlight of his 2024 campaign was coming into Abu Dhabi to take a fight to Lando Norris and McLaren, having a poor qualifying, starting P17, I think it was, because he also took a grid place penalty, to then go on, climb up the grid. That first lap is, I watch it, so I've got it saved on my phone just to go back and watch it, because that opening lap was incredible, the amount of cars he picked off in that opening lap in Abu Dhabi, and to come home third. It was an incredible drive. So you should be very proud of him. I'm proud of him for it. So yeah, I'm locking in an 8 out of 10. The more I speak, the more I kind of want to give him a 9. But I'm going to go with an 8 because the driver that I've given a 9 could have done better. And I've not given him a 10. So next up is George Russell, who I've given an 8 out of 10. And the fans have also given him an 8 out of 10. Now, he is the new top dog at Mercedes, and he certainly put on a showing that he was ready to take over from Lewis Hamilton with his qualifying dominance over Lewis Hamilton. A couple of fantastic victories. I would say he left it all out on the track. He got everything out of that W15 that he possibly could. He was there to pick up the pieces from a Verstappen Norris collision that gifted him a victory in Austria. He almost had one of the best victories I've seen in Spa. However, he did get disqualified for an underweight car. But he was the tyre whisperer It was amazing. He had a phenomenal win in Vegas from pole, and I thought he could maybe have secured a fourth win in Qatar, but he sort of gave up the lead pretty quickly. He has, there's a lot of question marks over George Russell, and I have to say that I do believe this year he has kind of proved a lot of his doubters wrong, that he is, you know, he does belong in the top tier of F1's current field, and that he does deserve his spot as Mercedes lead driver. And I will say he does talk a big talk, and sometimes the walk isn't quite there, and that there is some, you know, wrinkles that need ironed out and some performance needed to be found, especially on a Sunday. But I think he's going to be a very good leader for Mercedes and an excellent help to Kimi Antonelli. I do think sometimes he does have a bit of an arrogancy about him, but also maybe comes part and parcel of being a Formula One driver, that you need to have a little bit of a something. Do you know what I'm saying? And George Russell certainly has that. George Russell also finished the championship 6th with 245 points, 2 wins and 4 pole positions. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 for Russell. We're agreeing on that one. We're also agreeing on his teammate, Lewis Hamilton. And I have given Lewis Hamilton a 7 out of 10. And the fans have also given Lewis Hamilton a 7 out of 10. I have to say that it was always going to be a strange year for Lewis Hamilton, considering the fact that he announced, the shock announcement that he was going to be leaving Mercedes at the end of the 24 season to go to Ferrari for 25, which was announced shortly before the season started. And if they'd only held off just a little bit longer, maybe it would have been a bit different. Once the shock had kind of worn off from that, and I actually still think there is a bit of a shock that he will be in red overalls next year, I think the next shock was his loss of qualifying performance. And it saw week on week him getting absolutely dominated by George Russell. You know, it'll be a major focus, I think, going into 25, whether or not it was a blip, whether or not it was caused by the car, because he was very uncomfortable in that car. It was quite a mixed bag for Mercedes, because George managed to get everything out of it he could, and he struggled with it as well, don't get me wrong, but Lewis struggled way more than George with that car. And he's going against a teammate who is known as Mr. Saturday, is an amazing qualifier, and I think it'll be interesting to find out whether it was just a blip, whether it was caused by the car. Is he in for a tough time being Leclerc's teammate in terms of qualifying? Is Leclerc going to wipe the floor with him? We don't know. You can say on the flip side of that, though, is that his racecraft and his race pace remains a match for absolutely anyone. When he is zoned in on a Sunday, there is no stopping that man. A hugely phenomenal, emotional win in Silverstone, which I felt myself getting a bit wavy there thinking about it. It honestly, it made me cry. I would say that Lewis Hamilton's win in Silverstone is the moment of the season. It was something special. It is probably Lewis Hamilton's win, very closely followed by Charles Leclerc's win, and then Lando Norris's. I think Lando Norris's maiden win was amazing to watch, and it was a brilliant feel-good moment. Charles Leclerc's held, his win in Monaco held so much emotion. To then go into Lewis Hamilton winning Silverstone, undoubtedly the best moment. The raw emotion it held for everyone. I think the fans, everyone up and down the paddock, the commentators, anyone that watches Formula One or is involved in Formula One, I would say that it was probably their best moment. I'm so happy he won Silverstone on his final race with Mercedes. It was a very lovely thing to have happened in his final year. And also, I have to say that it was, thank God, one of the very few races that Crofty didn't ruin with his shite commentary. Obviously not his only win of the season. He did get a bit of a strange win in Spa when George Russell was disqualified. And then just his season kind of was made up of poor qualifyings, followed by superb comeback drives, especially in Vegas, Abu Dhabi. And I think his on-track performances on a Sunday will prevent anyone from writing him off just yet. And I'm interested to see what happens with his qualifying pace next year. Obviously, lining up aside Charles Leclerc, red overalls, as I said, I think it is, I've said it before, but I think it is probably the driver pairing that everybody is looking forward to watching next year. And very excited to see how he fares there. Hamilton finished the championship 7th with 223 points and 2 Grand Prix wins. All right, next up is Sergio Perez. I have gone for a 4 out of 10 for Sergio Perez, and you guys are tough bastards because you gave Sergio Perez a 1 out of 10 with a whopping 80% of the vote. Sergio Perez's fall from grace is probably the akin to watching the EastEnders Christmas special. Filled with drama and probably quite tough to watch. I thought we were maybe on for a very similar sort of season this year as we had to 23. A spectacular start to the season, a rough patch, manages to pull it back. What we got was an incredibly strong start to the season that completely fell apart for the rest of the year and resulted in the ultimate price, him losing his seat. And listen, it's clear that the RB20 was nowhere near as dominant as 2023, and he was able to produce quite impressive results in it, especially at the beginning of the year. He had some spectacular races where he was very close to Max or challenging Max, actually. There was other times in those few races at the beginning where he did struggle to keep it close to Max, but he was still there. He impressed everyone so much that just after Miami, before we went to Europe, they signed him. We came to Europe and it just blew up. Actually, I would say impressively how bad it went for him. His qualifying form was nothing other than atrocious. He failed to reach Q3 9 times, leaving him a lot of work to do on Sundays. In fact, actually, do you know something? I would say the fact that he even managed to get to the end of the season probably says more about Red Bull's lack of alternatives and perhaps maybe an embarrassment of signing him, giving him an extension after Miami just before he began to spiral. When I say a lack of alternatives, it was clear that Daniel Ricciardo was the one they wanted to replace Perez, and even though he was in a shootout that he was losing with Yuki Tsunoda, Yuki Tsunoda was never going to get the role, clearly. It's been a very tough watch, Perez, this year. Poor performance after poor performance after poor performance. I'm actually a little bit glad he's not going to be on the grid in 25 because I don't think I could go through another year of complaining about him. A very sad and poor ending for Sergio Perez in his farewell. Whether or not he'll be back in Formula One, I have absolutely no idea. There's talk that potentially Cadillac might be looking at him. Again, all rumours, no idea. I think he's just taking next year as a break. I did see something that there's potentially might sign on for the Endurance Championship with Ferrari, but that seems like a very big rumour. So yeah, a 4 out of 10. You guys, as I said, went with a 1 out of 10. Perez finished the championship 8th with 152 points. And finally, the Drivers' Champion for 2024, Max Verstappen, who I have given a 9 out of 10. You guys have given him a 10 out of 10. Now, Max finished the championship first, obviously, 437 points, 9 Grand Prix wins and 8 pole positions. Fourth consecutive championship win for Max Verstappen. Incredible work, but he was finally sort of pushed again, it seems, this year. He's not really sort of had a battle for his championship since 2021. 22, he quite smoothly sailed to championship victory. 23, even smoother than that. He won nearly every single race. But Max has shown that he was more than capable of responding to McLaren matching and then bettering Red Bull's pace a quarter of the way through the season. He claimed a series of very hard-fought victories in Imola, Montreal and Barcelona. And I will say that those victories and the ones at the beginning of the year really got him that championship. I think had he struggled in the beginning of the year, how he struggled at the end of the year, he would have been in real bother. But that championship was won at the beginning of the year. He opened up such a gap in the championship that Lando Norris couldn't actually get close enough to him to really put in a fight. And I have to say, if there's one thing about Max, Max is consistent, and he consistently hauled that car to victories and podiums and, you know, high points finishes when his teammate really couldn't. And he showed that he was more than capable of performing the damage limitation needed to secure his victory when he had Lando Norris chasing incredibly hard behind him in a better car, a more dominant car. You know, he wrapped up his 2024 championship campaign in a lovely little bow with spectacular finishes in the wet in Interlagos when he went from 17th on the grid to winning, and then another superb victory in Qatar that really, I think Max's wins really send a message to his rivals that he is a formidable opponent and a very big challenge, especially going into 2025. You know, I will say that Verstappen's campaign was far from perfect. He did, I would say, let himself down in, you know, his battles with Norris in Austria and Mexico, Austin. He had a recklessness, an over-aggressiveness, a fairly unsporting approach towards Lando Norris, I must say. His outburst in Hungary and that side of Max Verstappen grates on me a little bit, but there is no denying that he is an incredibly talented driver who is a formidable opponent and worthy of his championships. And it'll be interesting to see what he can do in 2025, whether he can continue a championship battle, have Red Bull sorted their car out, what is going to happen there, how will he fare with Liam Lawson as a teammate, how will the dynamics work in Red Bull, how many other drivers are going to bring a fight to Max, is Max going to be under pressure right from the start? All of these questions we have, and to be fair, we've not got long till we have answers. So yeah, I'm locking in a 9 out of 10 because his performances could have been better. I don't think it was quite 10 out of 10, but you guys have locked in a 10. As I said, he finished first with 437 victories, 9 Grand Prix wins, and 8 pole positions. And that is us for driver ratings for the 2024 season. All 24 drivers. What a bloody year it's been, eh? We will be back very, very soon. Thank you very much for participating in driver ratings and putting all your ratings in. I quite enjoyed going through them. I did have a bit of a laugh with some of them, and that Sergio Perez 1 out of 10. Y'all are cold-hearted. But thank you very much. I will see you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Love you. Bye.